Today, we're taking a journey thousands of years back in time to ancient India. We're talking about a civilization that gave us some of the world's most profound philosophies, groundbreaking science, and massive empires. And here's the thing. Its story isn't just ancient history. It's a story that, believe it or not, is still shaping our world today.
But right away, that brings up a pretty big question. I mean, with a timeline this huge, how do we actually know what happened? How can we possibly get inside the heads of people who lived 4,000 years ago? Well, it turns out it's a whole lot like detective work.
You see, historians are like detectives piecing together clues from all over the place. For starters, we have religious texts, like the Vedas, which are some of the oldest scriptures on the planet. Then you've got secular literature, things like law books, plays, and biographies. We also have these incredible accounts from foreign travelers like the Greek ambassador Megasthenes, who give us this amazing outsider's perspective. And then, of course, there's the big one, archaeology, the actual stuff they left behind. Every single pot, every tool, every coin tells a tiny piece of the story.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the mystery of India's very first cities and why they vanished. Then we'll dive into an absolute explosion of new ideas that completely reshaped society. From there, we'll see the first great empires being forged, celebrate a cultural golden age, and finally we'll ask, what's the lasting legacy of it all?
All right, let's kick things off. Section 1. Reconstructing India's deep past, where we're uncovering stories from stone, script, and strangers. Now for Section 2. The first cities disappear. This is where we get into the incredible, super sophisticated, and ultimately mysterious Indus Valley civilization.
Now, just to set the scene, this civilization was flourishing at the exact same time as ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. It was the first urban culture on the Indian subcontinent. And artifacts like this famous priest-king bust, they give us this tantalizing little peek into a world of what must have been powerful leaders and a very organized society. But it's when you look at their cities, that's when you see their true genius. I mean, the level of planning here is just astonishing. The Harappans built their cities on a grid, super organized, and engineered these complex drainage systems that connected every single house. Structures like the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro hint at a rich ritual life, and a massive dockyard at a place called Lothal shows they were huge players in maritime trade. But you want to know the biggest mystery of all? They had a written language with about 400 signs that to this day, nobody has been able to read.
So by around 1900 BC, this incredibly advanced civilization starts to decline and then, poof, it disappears. The reasons are still being debated. Was it climate change? Invasions? Did rivers shift course? We don't know for sure, but their amazing cities were abandoned. So after this incredible urban world just falls apart, what comes next? And that brings us to Section 3, an explosion of new ideas. After the cities fell, the focus of society kind of shifted, away from grand buildings and toward grand ideas. This was the Vedic age, and it would lay the philosophical groundwork for so much of Indian history. Now, this era is really a tale of two halves. The early Vedic period was all about semi-nomadic tribes, pastoralists focused on their cattle, mostly in the northwest. But then, in the later Vedic period, something big changes. People start moving east, into the super fertile plains of the Ganges River, and they start using iron tools. Society completely transforms. Kingdoms start to form, and with them, a much more complex social structure.
This led to what's known as the Varna system. Basically, society was divided into 4 major groups. At the very top, you had the Brahmanas, the priests and scholars. Next were the Kshatriyas, the warriors and rulers. Then came the Vaishyas, who were the farmers and merchants. And finally, you had the Shudras, who were tasked with serving the other 3 groups. This structure would go on to influence Indian society for thousands of years.
But, in response to this growing social rigidity, a whole new wave of philosophical thinking started to bubble up. These texts, called the Upanishads, which came about at the end of the Vedic period, started asking much deeper questions. They went way beyond just rituals to explore concepts that are now totally central to Indian thought. Karma, the idea that your actions have consequences, and moksha, the ultimate goal of liberation from the cycle of rebirth.
And this period of intense intellectual activity wasn't just limited to the Upanishads. The whole established social order, the expensive rituals of the Brahmanas, it was all being questioned. And right out of this questioning, new faiths like Buddhism and Jainism popped up, offering totally different paths to enlightenment that were open to everyone, no matter what their social standing was.
So, Section 4, Forging the First Empires. This explosion of new ideas really set the stage for the next massive transformation, political unification.
Out of a bunch of small kingdoms, one would rise up to forge the first truly great Indian empire, the Mauryas.
And the most famous Mauryan ruler, by far, is Ashoka. His reign started out like a lot of others, with brutal conquest. In 261 BC, he waged this horrific war to conquer a kingdom called Kalinga. But the sheer scale of the death and destruction, it changed him, deeply. He completely renounced warfare and adopted a brand new policy for ruling his vast and diverse empire.
He called this policy Dhamma. Now, it's really important to understand Dhamma was not a religion. Think of it more as an ethical framework, a moral code designed to hold his multicultural empire together through shared values like compassion, nonviolence, and respect for all beliefs. He even appointed special officers whose whole job was to travel the empire and spread this message of peace.
And this just brilliantly shows his commitment to tolerance. In his own words, which he had carved into rock for everyone to see, he declared that all religious sects should be respected. This wasn't just some passive live and let live idea. It was an active policy of honoring different beliefs to try and create harmony.
And the legacy of the Mauryan Empire, it's still incredibly visible today. The magnificent four-lion capital that once sat on top of a pillar Ashoka put up at Sarnath, well, that's now the national emblem of modern India. A powerful, living link right back to this ancient vision of a unified, tolerant state.
Okay, on to Section 5, a golden age of culture. So after the Mauryas, India kind of fragmented for a while. But centuries later, a new dynasty, the Guptas, would come to power and oversee what's often called a classical golden age.
The Gupta era saw this incredible flowering of art and architecture, especially with the construction of the very first freestanding structural temples. This innovation literally laid the groundwork for architectural styles that would flourish for centuries, like the amazing Dravidian style you can see here in the post-Gupta temples at Mahabalipuram.
But the achievements went so far beyond just architecture. I mean, the literary giant Kalidasa, who's often called the Shakespeare of India, wrote his masterpieces during this time. The great epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, were compiled into the versions we know today. In science, the astronomer Aryabhata figured out what causes eclipses and calculated the value of pi with stunning accuracy. And in art, artisans created these breathtaking works like the paintings of the Ajanta caves. It was a true explosion of creativity.
Which brings us to our final section, the enduring legacy. We've seen cities rise and fall, philosophies explode into being, and empires forge a golden age. So, what's the lasting impact of this ancient world? Well, like the empires that came before it, the Gupta Empire eventually declined, and the subcontinent broke up again into a patchwork of regional kingdoms. But this wasn't really an end. The social structures, like the Varna system, the religious ideas that were born way back in the Vedic age, and all those artistic and scientific achievements of the Guptas, they all formed the bedrock upon which medieval and eventually modern India was built.
And that leaves us with one final thought. Empires rise and fall, right? Dynasties come and go, but the ideas of karma, of nonviolence, of religious tolerance, and that endless quest for knowledge, those things are way more resilient. So the real question is, which of these ancient ideas do you see still shaping not just India, but our entire world today?